All right, what is up, fans of strategy games, fans of games where you think and you solve puzzles and you try to defeat an opponent, everybody? If that's you, I've got something real interesting for you today. It is 5D chess with multiverse time travel, everyone. So here is the plan for today. We are going to play a match, a standard match, and I'm going to attempt, everybody, to actually kind of talk you through this really, what I find to be a totally beautiful game here. So we're going to play against a computer CPU match. We're going to play the lowest level of computer, Trainer Week, a standard game. Let's go ahead and play, everybody. The one thing, everyone, that I am going to go ahead and assume, I'm making one assumption here, which is that you basically know how to play chess. You kind of know like the standard rules. And everybody, I'm not even going to try to do anything fancy or anything here. I'm just going to play... I don't know what you want to call this. Is this like a normal style of chess? I'm not like the best chess player in the world. In fact, not even close. So what I'm going to do, I think you could call this kind of fighting for the middle. Okay, everybody, we have our first. Wow, that happened so fast. Everybody, I've played this game twice, and I always let my CPU opponent, make the first kind of crazy move. So everybody, let's go ahead and explain what happened. So again, I'm assuming you have a basic understanding of chess here. So my opponent made the first interesting move of 5D chess here. And I'm going to go ahead and explain this, everybody. We're going to explain this full board position right now. And I'm only going to let there be one branching timeline, everybody. All right, so go ahead and get ready for an explanation. We're going to be sitting on this board state for a little while here as I explain all of this. Okay, ready, everybody? All right, everybody. So so the first thing we've got here in 5D chess is this is basically a timeline. Okay, so when we started the game of chess. Again, I'm going to assume you have at least a basic working understanding of chess. So when we started the game started here. All right, I made a move, I moved my pawn, they moved a pawn, I moved another pawn, and they moved another pawn. We kept moving pawns over and over. So every turn that we take, the timeline moves forward by one turn. Time, everybody, is moving forward. Everyone, I think, should be able to pretty much understand that time is moving forward as we play our moves with all of our pieces, everybody here. Okay, so time is moving forward. Now, as we're moving our pieces, the pieces move just like they normally would in any normal chess game. So pawns can move forward 2, or they can move forward 1. Again, I'm assuming you have this information, but just to explain how this works with different dimensions, pawns move either forward 1 or they move forward 2 whenever they're in the first position. Okay, so everything is standard chess. We keep moving our pawns 1, we keep moving our pawns 2. Now, how do knights move? Again, these horses, the knights, how do knights move in the game? What knights do is they get to move 2 in one direction and 1 in another direction. So before my opponent moved, my last move was moving this pawn by 1 space here. So I moved forward 1. That is a standard pawn move, everybody. So what options did my opponent have, my little CPU opponent here, what options did they have with this knight here? Well, you can move 2 in one direction and you can move 1 in one direction. So they could have taken the knight and they could have moved it onto this square right here. All right, so here, let's just zoom in on these two right here. So they could have taken the knight and they could have moved on this green square right here. It would have been 2 in one dimension. Now, I keep saying direction. I'm actually going to change this now, okay? This is what we would call a dimension. A direction, a dimension. What do dimensions even mean, really, everybody? Well, what a dimension basically means is these pieces have coordinates, X and Y coordinates. If you have any basic understanding of like an XY graph, anything in math, anything where you have coordinates, this is like an XY. So they have a coordinate in the X. Let's call this left and right X. So this is like X equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is the X, and I'm going to go ahead and start calling it dimensions. Let's just skip straight forward, everybody. This is the horizontal dimension, the X dimension. We also have the Y dimension. So we'll call this Y1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It doesn't really matter. You can call this 1 on the bottom or 1 on top. It doesn't really matter, everybody. So we have 2 directions or 2 dimensions. We have the X dimension and the Y dimension. Now in this game, we're going to add some more stuff into here. And the first dimension that we're going to add is going to be the time dimension. By the way, don't worry about having 5 dimensions. Realistically, the game really has probably 4 dimensions, I would say. So as time is moving, this is basically time equals 1, t equals 1, and then as you move, it's kind of like time equals 2, time equals 3, time equals 4. I think you could consider 2 moves in a row time is equal to time equals 1. So I think we can call the first 2 board states time equals 1 and then time equals 2, because you can only move on half of the boards. Don't worry about the exact specifics for now, but as long as you can understand that basically at the beginning of the game, the first 2 boards we'll call the first 2 boards time equals 1. Again, I've only played 2 games, so I may make some small mistakes here, but if you want to to follow along with this series as well, we'll all kind of learn this game together. This is time equals 2. This is time equals 3, time equals 4, and time equals 5. So the knight was at the time equals 5. So when a knight moves, a knight gets to move 2 spaces. It gets to move 2 by 2, right? In one dimension. And then it also gets to move 1 in another dimension. Typically, there's only 2 dimensions, X and Y. So it can move 2 in X. So watch where I'm doing the green, 2 down in X and 1 over. What am I talking about, everybody? I'm a little buzzed. I'm going to be honest. I've had a little bit of beer tonight. So I actually thought this was good to get this video made. I wanted to go ahead and start making this video, but I become a little bit too much of a perfectionist sometimes. So a little bit of beer might actually be able to help that. But everybody remember to drink in moderation, okay? So this is the Y dimension. All right, everybody. So 2 down in the Y dimension, 1 to the right in the X dimension. You could also move 1 down in the Y dimension, and you can also move 2 to the left in the X dimension. So pick a dimension, X or Y, and move 2 and then move 1 in another dimension. Now, as we said, there is another dimension here, which is time. So you can move a piece. This is the thing that makes this game really beautiful. There's actually a lot about it that makes it very beautiful. Time gets added as another dimension that you can move pieces. So how does that work? So this knight right here, all right, you basically skip 2 boards when you move in time. Like I said, every 2 boards is kind of one movement of time. You get to move and your opponent gets to move. So when you move a piece back in time, 1 movement back in time is going 2 boards back, and 2 movements in time is going, what is that, 4 boards back basically. So you basically skip a board. So moving back in time by 1 is to this board, moving back in time by 2 is to this board. Okay, everybody? So they chose to move the 2 spaces 1, 2 in time. They skip 2 boards, you move 2 spaces in time to this board back in time right here. Then you get to move 1 space in another dimension, and they chose to move down by 1 space. Now, back in time, there was this other horse here, everybody. And everybody, the simplest way, in my opinion, to explain time travel is always to bring it back to Dragon Ball Z. This is actually kind of a hilarious story to make this video. For those that are still here, going to stick this video out with me. I'm actually rewatching Dragon Ball Z right now in Japanese. I've been learning Japanese. Everybody, what we have here is the classical Trunks going back in time in Dragon Ball Z. And now we have 2 Trunks. In Dragon Ball Z, you have 2 Trunks. You have the Trunks that comes back in time, and then you also have the Trunks that is like a baby born in the kind of, I don't know if you want to call it the original timeline. We can call this the original timeline, right? So now we have 2 timelines here. There's never going to be a better explanation for time travel and all this stuff than Dragon Ball Z. So we have the original timeline here, everybody, and then Trunks from the future came back to the original timeline. And the way that this basically kind of works is you can't really edit that timeline that Trunks. In fact, actually, if we're really talking about this in Dragon Ball Z, this original timeline is actually the timeline where everybody basically dies in Dragon Ball Z. This is kind of like the messed up timeline in Dragon Ball Z where the androids basically end up killing everybody. Trunks comes back because he wants to kind of alter the trajectory. And so if crawl up this purple arrow right here, this is now the altered trajectory where the heroes of Dragon Ball Z are going to attempt to defeat the androids and actually make the Earth a livable place instead of basically everybody getting killed and the planet conquered by the androids. That's the best explanation I've got, everybody, for all of these things. I hope it makes sense. So everybody, we now have 2 separate timelines that we are dealing with. The goal of this game is to checkmate your opponent, checkmate their king. You get to do it in either one of the timelines. And you also can do checks in the past. So this knight is actually, you can actually exert influence also into the past because you can move into the past. So you can also exert checks into the past. Like I said, I kind of love this game. I think it's totally beautiful. I'm kind of falling in love with it, everybody. So this may become more of a regular thing on the channel. We'll see here how this goes. All right, so the way that this game handles this, I'm sure there's like a million ways you can handle this. The way that this game handles it, I believe we have to go ahead and get this timeline caught up to this other timeline. And as you can see, this is now considered present right now is this. The present used to be here, but now that we've moved back, I think they want us to basically progress this timeline. Once we get this timeline caught up, then we'll be progressing multiple timelines at once, everybody. So on this timeline, that knight literally doesn't exist anymore. It is gone. All right, Trunks has evacuated the timeline and entered the timeline where there's like a baby Trunks and an adult Trunks now in this timeline, everybody. All right, so we need to go ahead and catch this timeline up. Now, the way I'm going to do this to try to keep it simple for these early videos, for those that are actually interested and want to follow along, now is I'm not really going to do anything too crazy. And the way that this game handles it, if I remember correctly also, is once one person does a time branch, that player cannot just keep doing time branches over and over. I would have to do a time branch myself, and then my opponent can then do another time branch. So from what I remember is basically there's kind of a limit of like one extra time branch, because otherwise you could just keep doing time branches, and I don't know that it would really play out very well, to be honest. It kind of, I don't know what would happen. But so what we're going to do is, everybody, we're going to finish this match and play this match out with just these two. I'm never going to do a movement to send any of my pieces back in time. We're going to let this be the one movement back in time, and then we're going to now just play on two timelines, and my opponent can't create another one because I'm never going to create another one. All right, everybody? All right, so if we look back of what I originally did in the original timeline, I was basically fighting for the center. All right, why don't I just keep doing this? So this knight might be able to go here. Let's go ahead and do this to basically present it. So you make your move, and then you click submit moves up at the top. I'm going to play kind of relatively quickly, sort of just kind of for, I'm not necessarily going to try to win everybody. I did play 2 rounds of this. I'm going to move my pawn up to attack the other knight. I think this is fine. This AI also is probably not super great here. All right, everybody. So we now are caught up to the present. So the present, now we have 2 timelines that are at the present. We are now, everybody, playing 2 boards of chess at the same time. So I now have to basically make moves on both of these boards. And the final thing I will say, I have played, everybody, just so you know, I've played 2 games of this versus the CP opponent. I played this weakest AI opponent, and I also played the slightly stronger AI opponent. I think I won both. No, you know what? I played 3 matches. I played this one, I beat it, played the next level, I lost, and then I played it again and I won, if I remember correctly, something like that. So I'm still pretty much kind of a beginner. All right, now let's look at one thing that's happening here. So my opponent, this first AI that you play against, they're not very good at just chess in general. So this opponent here is letting me take this knight. All right, that knight is just dead. At least in that time, it's dead in that timeline, everybody. And I'm happy to take a knight. You know, anytime you can take a piece in a timeline, I'm fine with it. All right, so in this timeline, they've kind of weakened themselves over here. There's no knight. I'm going to just play kind of classical chess, where I'm also not very good at the game, where I'm just going to kind of develop all my pieces, kind of fight for the center area, and we're just going to see what happens, everybody. So I want to develop some of my pieces, maybe my knights or my bishops, or maybe even progress one of these pawns. I'm sure it's probably not good, but again, I'm not that great at chess, everybody. Why don't I put this knight here, and I'm kind of attacking that right side. Now, everybody, there's something really important we need to go ahead and start talking about. All right, this is kind of the final explanation about this game. Like I said, there's never going to be more than these 2 timelines, because I'm never going to go back in time, and you can only one person, as I understand it, can go back in time, and then the other person has to go back in time in order to keep doing it over and over again. Like, each person only gets 1 back in time, extra back in time versus their opponent. So because of that, we're only going to have 2 timelines. Let's go ahead and talk really quickly about how knights can move. You can see this. Watch this, everybody. I'm going to hover over this knight that I just moved. When I hover over that, it shows me the possible moves I have for that knight. It's actually just, yeah, okay. And this is a cool thing in the game. I can select it, then I can move around, and I can see all the possible moves for that knight. So everybody, remember what we said about the knight. It gets to move 2 in one dimension and 1 in another dimension. Okay, so how does classical chess work? Move 2 in the X and move 1 in the Y is these 2 moves. Or move 1 in the X and move 2 in the Y give you these moves. But everybody, we already talked about how you can move back in time. So let's say I went back in time as one of my directions that I'm moving, one of my dimensions. Okay, if I go here, this is 1 movement back in time, and then 2 along the Y. I can't go here and I can't go here. So if I go 1 along the time dimension, I can go 2 in the Y dimension, because it's my only, otherwise it would be this one, or this one is my only possible moves. All right, if I go back 2 in the time dimension, I get to move 1 in the X or Y dimension. That would give me these 2 spots. All right, everybody, the final dimension that you can move in this game, it's called 5-dimensional chess. Realistically, it's really more like 4-dimensional chess. There's really 4 dimensions that you get to move your pieces in. And everybody, you can just ignore this little guy down here. Don't worry about that little break timer that I like to use sometimes. All right, so everybody, so what is the final 4th dimension that you get to move? The name of the game is kind of fake. It's not really 5 dimensions. It's really 4 dimensions, realistically speaking, is you can hop between timelines, everybody. All right, so for example, okay, again, there's only going to be 2 timelines in this match, but let's say there were more timelines timelines. You get to hop this knight over across the timeline. So, right? Trunks got to travel over to this other timeline, but maybe an android also grabs a time machine and also hops back over to this other alternate timeline. Maybe the androids try to chase Trunks into the alternate timeline. They can also hop. Why can't they hop over to the alternate timeline also? There's not really any reason why not, everybody. So I could send an android, all right, from this dimension over to chase Trunks over in the other timeline, everybody. These, and dimensions kind of maybe a little bit of a term that could get confusing, because realistically there's kind of two ways that people use the term dimension. You could kind of call this like an alternate parallel dimension, right? Like this is a dimension, this is a dimension, and I think that's actually kind of fine. You can use that term, but you can also refer to just moving left, up, and through time and across. They're all kind of dimensions. It's kind of depending on how you want to use these words. In science, scientifically speaking, they are used, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in both different ways. They're used in both ways, where X and Y are dimensions, but also this is an alternate dimension and you can hop dimensions, yada, 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 everybody. All right. So the final thing here is the fourth dimension is I can take this knight, I can move 1. So again, it moves 2 in one dimension and it moves 1 in another dimension. So if I hop this knight from this timeline, 1 timeline over, that is, I've moved I've moved in a dimension by one, basically. Then I still get to move 2 in another dimension, everybody. And actually, what we can do is we can hop 1 dimension here. So this is our 1 move. What if we go back by 2? And here it is. Here's the move. We've moved in this dimension, which is across the timelines. We've moved by 1, and then we've gone back in time by 1, 2, and this is where our piece would end up landing. All right, so that is a possible move. Okay, or, again, you've got the time moves. I think I already went over those. So those are basically the moves in the alternate timeline. We can move 1 and then 2, or we can move 1 and then 2 backwards in time. Or if we just move backwards in time along the timeline, I think maybe I already explained this, but so again, this would be moving by 1 and then you get to go 2. Yeah, I already explained that. So everybody, that is all the possible moves of our knight. So every piece has these properties. So if I click, for example, let's deselect the knight. Let's click on my queen. Queens get to move any number of spaces in any number of dimensions, everybody. I think that's how it works. You get to move diagonally along dimensions. It's something like that. And each one of these pieces, let's actually, you know what? Let's just deselect that. Let's pick one of these guys. Let's pick our bishop. Okay, bishops make sense. You get to pick a diagonal. So you get to choose 2 dimensions. So what are the 2 dimensions that we can choose? If we choose X and Y, it's the standard movement. Let's say we choose one thing that we're going to choose is to move 1 across timelines. Then we get to move. So for example, this first spot on this diagonal, you moved 1 in the X and 1 in the Y. Or you can move 2 in the X and 2 in the Y. Or you can move 3 in the X and 3 in the Y. Of course, I'm actually swapping them, but don't worry about that. You get to, when you move along a diagonal, it's 1 and 1, or it's 2 and 2, or it's 3 and 3. So if I wanted to hop timelines, I get to move 1 in the timeline dimension and then 1 in basically any other way that I want to move. And I'm a little bit confused why it only gets to move in the Y. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it would either be the Y or the X, right? So you've moved 1 and then you get to choose either X or Y, and you also get to move 1. All right. So this is the only possible move. What if we went back in time? You move 1 back in time and then you get to move 1 in another dimension. Okay. So this is the only possible move that you can move. And if we wanted to move in time and across timelines, the only spot would be where the bishop already is, so can't do it. All right, so hopefully that kind of gives you a kind of an intuition and understanding. So you basically go through all of the classical pieces and you basically learn kind of how they move through the dimension. King is going to be really easy. It's going to be just, you take the traditional rules, it gets to move 1 in one dimension and 1 in another dimension, so it's going to be exactly the same. You get to pick one dimension and then pick another dimension, and it gets to move 1 space, and that's exactly what this is representing. And so basically you kind of just go through each one of these pieces and you basically just learn. Pawns, I think, are a little bit kind of unique and specific how they work. They have maybe a little bit strange rules. And rooks, it's the same as the classical, except again, you get to choose from 2 of any of these dimensions, everybody. All right, so that was a very long explanation. Queens, they get to move like crazy in all these different dimensions. We'll go over more in detail in a future video as we keep playing, figuring out how every piece works, how they move. But everybody, let's just go ahead and keep playing this game so this doesn't become an hour-long video. All right, so we have 2 boards that we're going to keep playing. I'm going to play this kind of simply. Okay, for example, once again, here on this timeline, my opponent opponent offered me a free piece. Let's go ahead and take the free piece. They make these original computer opponents not too bad. They've got 2 knights here. I still haven't developed any of these pawns yet. And since we're actually doing kind of well and we're taking pieces, you know, maybe we should just try clearing the board off. There's always kind of the strategy of just clearing pieces off the board whenever things are kind of, you're doing well in the game. So I don't know, we could maybe do that. We'll see. I think for now, whatever, let's just go ahead and move. So this guy will be in kind of the same spot on both boards, make it kind of simplified. All right, so my opponent in this timeline moved their pawn here, and in this time they moved this pawn up by 1. All right, let's see if we have any kind of easy moves. Now remember, everybody, look at how my knight is exerting influence over both timelines, everybody. And it's exerting influence over the past. I'm not going to make moves into the past, so we won't worry about that. We'll simplify this first video. So the main thing I'm looking at here is how my knight is exerting influence over both of these timelines. Because again, I can move 1 move over, move by 1 to this dimension, and then let's click it, and then also I get to move 2. Okay, same thing this one. It's also here. So actually look at this move. This move doesn't look too bad, right? I get basically a free pawn, but everybody, here's where the crazy stuff comes in, is because I need to still consider, not only do I have to consider, for example, let's say I moved my knight and took this pawn. Obviously the rook is just going to take my knight here. I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's definitely gonna happen. So it's not a good move. But the other thing is we have to keep track, this is where this game gets absolutely bonkers wild, is we have to keep track of what our opponent's knights are doing, because both of these knights are exerting influence in this bottom timeline also. So for example, it's the same as how our knight works. Our knight gets to go up to this timeline and it gets to move 2. So this knight here on this timeline, it's actually covering this square right here where my cursor in the green is. It's also covering this square right here. That's where this game becomes a total mind F, everybody. And just basically very, very challenging and difficult. So let's keep playing kind of in a kind of a simple style. Maybe move this pawn up. These guys aren't covering it. Let's do that on this timeline. And on this timeline, again, let's just play things very simple, easy, conservative. We'll kind of cover that there. All right, my opponent moved their king. I have no idea why, probably because they're not very good at the game. Easy, very easy, basic AI opponent. They move their knight here. Okay, once again, this is exerting over both timelines. It's exerting here, take this, but it's also exerting, for example, influence over this square in this other timeline, because it would move by 1 and then it would move by 2. Okay, hopefully this is starting to make a little bit of sense. And everybody, since this is the first video I've ever doing here, just kind of explaining, I'm not going to try to go again too crazy. So I'm going to just kind of speed play. I'm not going to worry too much about winning this particular match, everybody. I will still try to win, but let's see if we can wrap this video up within like 20 or 30 minutes here and see what happens. So, all right, so kind of a little bit speed moving, much more quickly than I would usually play the game. All right, so for example, this seems good enough. It's protected by this other pawn. I think that's fine. Here, I could move this up, and yeah, should be good enough as long as I don't make any moves that are too dumb. For example, here I get to retake with the knight, and here I'll just retake, just kind of moving things along a little bit. All right, we are slightly advantaged still here. I'm not even totally checking for all the exertions of all these over the timelines. We're going to kind of just let things play out a little bit. All right, they're going to take here. We get to take back. They're going to take with the knight. Probably fine, I guess. It's whatever. Let's just go ahead and do it. And then on this other timeline, what do we want to do here? What did they do? They moved their king back, everybody. They're not playing well. They're a bad AI opponent. It's totally fine. Helps us kind of learn the game. We'll just keep clearing stuff off here. So let's do it. Here they're okay. We assumed they were going to take with their knight there. They've moved this forward here. All right, I'm definitely okay with this, because if they take with the queen, I've got the knight protecting. All right, on this other timeline here, what do we want to do here? I'm not seeing any moves that are too crazy here. So what about if I take here? So here, everybody, is the first example where if I was to, for example, use my bishop to take this pawn is undefended, everybody. It's undefended. But everybody, look over in this other timeline. This horse, knight, I call them horses a lot of time. This horse could hop over to this spot in this timeline, and that's exactly where this is. Now, I actually have my knight protecting it. So now that I'm looking at this actually even more closely, oh, but they also have the queen on this timeline. So it's protected by a queen in one timeline, and it's also protected by a knight in the other timeline. So that is not a good move to take that there, everybody. All right, so what I'm going to do instead is, actually, I'm not really sure, to be honest. Let's just move this guy over, get ready to castle. That should be fine. Castling's usually a decent move. All right, they did a really wild, crazy move. They moved this rook here. So let me talk one more time about how do the rooks exert influence? Actually, I'll wait until I can actually show it with one of my rooks. All right, so they moved this pawn here. That's fine. I'll capture that there. And then here, they're actually just offering this to me, so it's fine. I'll take it. That was a pretty big screw up by my opponent because they are a basic AI that is not very good. Okay, offering a queen. I'll take it. Thank you very much. All right, here on this timeline, we're just trying to make sure we don't make any really crazy basic mistakes. So, oh yeah, we can go ahead and castle. So let's go ahead and castle on the bottom one there. All right, what is next? All right, they're offering up a knight. Let's go ahead and take it. And on this timeline, I don't see anything too crazy here. What about this? Okay, so here's what we have to do, everybody. We have to check and see how this is going to work between the different timelines. Pretty sure it's actually... Oh, what happened? Oh, I checked them. So it showed that it checked my opponent. There was a little red thing that appeared very momentarily. So I checked my opponent. They moved their king by 1. And then on this timeline, they moved their queen here. Hey, everybody. I swear this AI was way better when I played against it the first time. Go ahead and take that rook. And my AI opponent, but this is good for the video to kind of move it along, because it took me like a few hours to play some of these games when I played on my first run, everybody. All right, my opponent moved they love to move this king back and forth, this opponent over here. Let's see here. So everybody, here is where we have a situation where, let me show you this. So I was thinking of moving this knight here. If I move the knight here, I just get a check again. It doesn't do anything too crazy, but I think that this bishop here can actually take across the timelines, because the bishop can move 1 in one direction and then 1 in another direction. So it can move 1 down and 1 across timelines. It could actually take this knight. So while this bishop is sitting here, this spot is actually protected. In fact, everybody, this knight is also in danger, because this rook also gets to move in this is how the rooks work. Let me go ahead and show you how the rooks work. See this rook right here? If I click on this rook, rooks, how do they work in normal chess? You pick a dimension and you get to move as far as you want in that dimension. So it can move as far as it wants in X. It can move as far as it wants in X and Y, as long as it doesn't run into anything, right? So this rook can move as far as it wants in this between timelines dimension. So when it does that, typically when you're playing, like I've been playing these 2 timeline games, what it does is it basically just hops directly over to the other timeline. So what does that mean? That means that this knight right here that I've got in green, it could hop over to this timeline and take my knight. So my knight is they could just take it. I don't know if they are smart enough to do it or not. They could just take it. So it's in danger actually of just being lost. If I move here, it gets taken by this pawn. If I move here, it also has a little bit of some problems, everybody. I think my knight has been taken. If my opponent was good, I don't think I can save it, because the other final thing I could do, everybody, look at this. Oh, we have a move, everyone. Now, this is a nice thing about this game. When you click your piece and hover over it, it helps you out by showing you the possible moves. I can move in 1 dimension and 2 in the X dimension. And that is exactly what How do you like that, everybody? How do you like that animation? Isn't that pretty sick, everybody? Oh, I love it. So I actually got my knight out of danger. Well, actually, I didn't get it out of danger because it ended up getting taken by this rook. But it was gonna get taken, but I was able to hop across timelines to at least take another piece from my opponent. All right, so I think we should be able to close this game out. So let's think about trying to maybe end this game. One of the things is we have this queen here. Another thing I can do, everybody, check this out. I can move this queen. What if I move this queen? Let's look at this. This rook is probably in danger, by the way. So this is what ends up happening every time I play these 2 timeline games. I almost always end up in the state where they've got kind of one timeline where where the AI kind of congregates all their pieces, and then there's this other timeline here where I'm trying to kind of figure out how to checkmate them, but they're exerting all of this influence from over here down to this other timeline, because these knights have all of these potential takes over here. So this knight, for example, could move to this timeline and then over 2, and it takes my rook, actually. Let's just play kind of conservatively. Let's try to find a checkmate here, everybody. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this queen. Actually, that looks pretty nice. Let's move that queen up by 1. Okay, and now this is hilarious, everybody. Watch this. Because like most of their pieces are kind of concentrated over here, what if I move this queen into this timeline to start trying to attack on this timeline where all of these pieces are concentrated? I actually kind of like that move. Let's do it, everybody. All right, we're hopping our queen over to that timeline. My opponent makes a bunch of inconsequential moves, and because of that, I actually am pretty sure that we get to end this video here by making this move, and I'm pretty sure this is actually a checkmate. Now, everybody, how do checkmates work in this game? Actually, not as simply as one might kind of hope or expect here, actually. And so actually, I don't think that is a checkmate. Let's just go ahead and do it, everybody. So we'll do that move. And I'm going to move this. Oh, look at that. I get a check there too. Let's see what happens, everybody. So I've got 2 checks, everybody. And that's it. We finished the game. We did it. I checkmated them. Here's why this checkmated, everybody. Because you have to checkmate one king basically in any timeline or anything. The checkmates are honestly this is probably the hardest thing to understand in this game, is how to understand how the checkmates work. The queen is exerting influence like all over the place. It's exerting influence through the past. They're exerting influence across the timelines. So this queen, I believe, is actually also potentially checking this king. Again, this is like the hardest thing to figure out. I have successfully done what I wanted to do in this video, everybody. I wanted to introduce you to this game that I think is absolutely just one of the most beautiful, interesting, cool, mind F, also really fun and interesting games. I absolutely love it. And everybody, we are going to start doing from now on. This is going to be 5D Chess Fridays that we are starting on this channel. This is the first episode today. This is the first 5D Chess Friday. We've played through the game. It's a little bit hard to understand and fully explain the checkmates, so I think we'll save that for the future, but hopefully you got a pretty good taste and idea of the game. Hopefully it was as big of a mind F for you as it was for me, because that's a large part of the fun of this, and other things in life is just challenging ourselves and giving ourselves these nice mind Fs every once in a while. And yeah, if anybody maybe wants to play a match against me, even that sticks around on the channel, maybe I'll even play against some people if you want to play against us. I really like this game. It's fun to have games in our lives also where there's no luck element, and this is well, you could call this a no luck game. Even that is debatable. There's still luck in who gets to go first and second, who gets white and black, but if we remove that, it's pretty minor. So it's basically a no luck game. And there is actually a Discord for this game, everybody. I mentioned it in my last video. There's a Discord for this game where people actually compete, have tournaments, and they have ELO ratings. And I was actually thinking this is kind of the beginning of a new 0 to hero, everybody. All right, so how is that 0 to hero going to work? Well, we're going to start at the absolute bottom. That's what we just did. We beat the easiest AI opponent. So we started at 0. We've beat this. It's time to move up to the next AI level opponent, and we'll kind of keep working up, keep getting better at the game. Still having Shadowverse currently for the channel for the other game covering, and like I said before, I plan on covering different card games and things. But I think it'd be nice to have one non-luck game on the channel, and I just absolutely love this game. I think it's so beautiful. For me, at least at the present time, it's more fun than regular chess, more interesting, and there's not like all this developed theory for the starting opening game. So I think this is probably going to be the game, everybody. So with that, I'm going to finish it. We won, and I will see y'all in the next video for those who want to stick around, and stay tuned for 5D Chess Fridays. If you like this, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Isn't this absolutely crazy, right?